It started like any other episode. Judge Judy strode into the courtroom, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense as always. The plaintiff, a middle-aged man from New Jersey, stood stiffly. The defendant, a nervous young woman, avoided eye contact. Cameras rolled, the room buzzed. Then the back door creaked open. A man stepped in, tall, calm, dressed not in a suit, but in a modest olive-green shirt and worn boots. He walked with quiet power, head held high. He wasn't on the docket. The bailiff immediately moved forward. "Sir, you can't be here." That's when Judge Judy slammed her gavel so hard it cracked. "Don't touch that man," she shouted, voice trembling. Gasps erupted. People turned to see who had just walked in. Murmurs filled the courtroom. "Wait, is that... No way. Is that Ibrahim Traoré? What is he doing here?" The cameras zoomed in. Judge Judy stood, something no one had ever seen her do before. Her eyes shimmered. "Everyone remain seated," she said, softer now. "You're about to witness something important." No one knew it yet, but this courtroom was about to become part of history. The room was frozen. Time stood still. Judge Judy stared at Ibrahim Traoré like she was seeing a ghost from her past. He didn't speak. He simply looked around, not with arrogance, but with purpose. The bailiff took a step back. Everyone could feel it. This wasn't just a man. This was a moment. The courtroom doors closed behind him. The silence was almost painful. "Your Honor," the plaintiff stammered. "What's going on?" She ignored him. "Mr. Traoré," she said carefully, "I never thought we'd meet again. Not like this." People looked at each other, confused. Again? What did that mean? A reporter sitting in the back began typing furiously. Traoré walked forward slowly and gently placed a worn, folded piece of paper on the judge's bench. Judge Judy picked it up with shaking hands. As she opened it, her lips parted slightly, and a tear welled in her eye. "You wrote this. How many years ago?" she whispered. Ibrahim nodded but said nothing. That letter would become the beginning of a chain of events that connected war, sacrifice, justice, and something much deeper. Something the world had nearly forgotten. And now, the whole truth was about to come out. Judge Judy stared at the letter like it was made of glass. The courtroom, still filming, had gone completely quiet. She read the first line aloud, her voice cracking. "To the woman who gave me a voice when I had none." Viewers watching at home had never seen her like this. Her eyes scanned the words, and with every sentence, her face changed, from sternness to disbelief, then grief. "This was written by a 16-year-old boy," she said softly, "a refugee from a war-torn land, who called into my old radio show in 2004. Suddenly it clicked. Judge Judy had once hosted a small late-night legal advice show for youth, long before her television fame. On one episode, she took a call from a frightened teenager escaping violence in Africa. "I told him to stand for truth," she said, blinking fast. "I told him that justice starts with one brave heart." Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward. "And I did," he finally said. His voice was deep, calm, and gentle. People in the courtroom began wiping their eyes. One of the jurors turned away, clearly crying. Judge Judy set the letter down. "Tell them," she said. "Tell them everything." The real story was just beginning. Ibrahim looked out at the courtroom. His voice was steady, but his eyes, they carried weight. Real weight. "I was just a boy," he began. "The night the soldiers came, I was hiding under my mother's bed. They took my father in front of us. My mother, she tried to protect me." He paused, gathering himself. "She didn't survive." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. The defendant wept quietly. "I walked for days, alone. No shoes, just a little radio. And your voice," he said, looking at Judge Judy. "You told me not to be angry. You said, You don't have to fight with fists. Use your voice. She nodded, silently crying. I crossed deserts. I begged for food. But I never forgot your voice in that night sky, telling me I mattered. The courtroom was still. Even the cameras dared not move too much. I came to America as a refugee, lived in shelters, got a job washing dishes, learned English from books I found in the trash. He smiled faintly. But I never stopped believing in justice, because of you. By now, even the bailiff had lowered his head. But what brought Ibrahim back now was something far bigger. Judge Judy looked at the case file on her desk. Her hands trembled slightly. This case, she whispered, involves a young woman accused of theft. She stole $3,000 from her employer. The camera zoomed in on the young woman sitting at the defendant's table. She was barely 19, shaking, face pale. Ibrahim turned to her. Their eyes met. I know her, he said quietly. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. She was one of the girls we helped evacuate from a trafficking ring. I knew her when she was 12. I fought to get her to safety. But the system failed her again, didn't it? The girl burst into tears. I didn't mean to steal. I was hungry. I was trying to get back to school. Judge Judy held up her hand. Silence. Ibrahim stepped forward and pulled something from his pocket. A folded bank receipt. I came to pay the amount back, he said. And more. Let her go. Shock swept the room. The plaintiff protested. That's not how the law works. Judge Judy didn't answer immediately. She looked between Ibrahim and the crying girl. This wasn't about law anymore. This was about something deeper. And the courtroom felt it. Judge Judy stood. Again. I've been on this bench for decades, she said slowly. I've sent people to jail. I've seen liars, thieves, and manipulators. But today, I see a mirror. The room fell silent again. She pointed at the plaintiff. Yes, what she did was wrong. But you know what else is wrong? Systems that fail children until they're forced to steal. She turned to Ibrahim. You came not to defend her, but to remind us. He nodded. She was a child soldier, he added. Forced into things no child should face. I know. I've seen it. I've lived it. A woman in the gallery sobbed openly. Judge Judy looked down at the receipt again. I'll allow the payment. Charges dropped, she said. But I want something more. Everyone leaned forward. I want you, Mr. Traoré, to come back. Tell these stories, not just here, but everywhere. Ibrahim nodded, moved. Judge Judy's voice cracked. The world needs to remember, before it forgets another child. And just like that, in a courtroom built for petty cases, a revolution of the heart had begun. The courtroom scene went viral in under 2 hours. Clips of Judge Judy's trembling voice, Ibrahim's quiet strength, the young girl weeping, all over social media. But something unexpected happened. People in Burkina Faso, thousands of miles away, began gathering in streets and homes, watching the moment on phones and TVs. Mothers wiped their eyes. Children asked, "Who is that man?" "He's our president," one father whispered, voice filled with pride. "But before that, he was a child, like you." In the U.S., the story was everywhere. News anchors were speechless. Some called it the most human moment in courtroom television. Others asked why an African leader had to step in where the system had failed. But Ibrahim didn't chase attention. He spent that night visiting a shelter near the courthouse, the same kind he once lived in. He sat on the floor with boys and girls telling them, "You're not your pain, you're your power." The media followed him, hoping for controversy, but all they found was humility. Judge Judy, alone in her chambers, reread the letter. She pressed it to her chest. "This man," she whispered, "is what justice was always meant to look like." The next day, crowds formed outside the courthouse. not with anger, but with hope. Hundreds gathered holding signs that read, "Justice needs a heart. Traoré for humanity. We see you." Students, mothers, veterans, people from all walks of life. Even the courthouse staff stood outside, waiting for Ibrahim to speak. But Ibrahim didn't go to the podium. He walked straight into the crowd. He hugged an elderly man in a wheelchair, held hands with a single mother holding 2 children, sat on the steps with a teenage boy in tears. The cameras caught it all. He didn't speak for the stage. He spoke to people. "Justice isn't a building," he said. "It's what we do when no one's watching." Inside the courthouse, Judge Judy watched from the window. A reporter asked her, "Why do you care so much about this case?" She turned, voice soft. "Because he remembered something I forgot. That law without love is just a cage." She wiped a tear. Outside, the girl he saved stood beside Ibrahim, now smiling, for the first time in a long time. But as night fell, a shadow from his past returned. Just as the emotional day seemed to settle, a man in a black suit entered the courthouse. He carried a sealed envelope and asked to speak to Judge Judy in private. She took the envelope and read it carefully. Her hands clenched. It was from the U.S. Embassy, and it was urgent. The letter stated that Ibrahim Traoré's presence in the U.S. had triggered diplomatic tension. Some officials were demanding his removal. A few questioned how a foreign political leader could interfere in a U.S. legal case, even as a private citizen. Judge Judy slammed her fist on the table. Have they no eyes, no heart? She summoned Ibrahim and handed him the letter. He read it slowly, then looked up. They want me gone. She swallowed hard. They don't understand what you just gave to this country, what you gave to me. The girl beside him gripped his arm. You can't leave. Not yet. Ibrahim gave her a soft smile. They may send me out of the country, but they can't send me out of the hearts that finally started to care. The room went still again, but something inside Judge Judy ignited, and she wasn't about to stay silent. Judge Judy sat in her office, gripping the embassy letter. Her reflection in the glass window looked unfamiliar. Not the fierce judge the world knew, but a woman confronting her own conscience. She picked up her phone and called a long-forgotten number. A journalist she trusted from her early days in law. I need you to run a story, she said. That evening, a breaking headline spread like wildfire. U.S. officials moved to expel African leader who paid teens bail. Judge Judy fights back. The article included courtroom footage, the letter from the embassy, and Judge Judy's personal statement. If this is the price for doing what's right, then let them fire me. But I will not let them silence justice with paperwork. Across social media, Americans reacted with rage and sorrow. Hashtags trended globally. Let him stay, justice with dignity. Traoré is hope. The young girl, now safely under protection, was interviewed by a local station. Tearfully, she said, "He didn't just save me. He saw me. No one's ever done that before." And quietly, in a hospital across town, someone unexpected saw the broadcast and began to weep. An old soldier. The man's name was Frank Delaney, a retired U.S. Marine. His hands trembled as he turned up the TV volume. The image of Ibrahim on the courthouse steps brought something back. Something he'd buried. He picked up an old faded photo from his drawer. In it, a much younger version of himself stood with a group of African children, war behind them, tents behind wire fences. He whispered to himself, "It's him. It's really him." Frank hadn't spoken of the mission in years. He'd helped evacuate war survivors during a secret operation in Burkina Faso. One boy, in particular, had clung to him after losing his parents. He had eyes like fire, Frank muttered. Said he wanted to build schools instead of pick up a gun. Frank had held that boy as he cried. Now that same boy was the man on TV, stopping a courtroom to protect another child. He called the courthouse, asking to speak with Judge Judy. "I need to testify. Please. It's about Traoré." When Judy answered, his voice broke. "Your Honor, that man isn't a foreign threat. He's a living reminder that one act of kindness can echo across the world." And the world was finally listening. By the next morning, the story had reached the highest levels of government. News networks replayed Frank's testimony alongside clips of Judge Judy's emotional outburst and Ibrahim's courtroom speech. Children in American schools began writing letters. "Thank you for helping that girl. We want leaders like you." In Burkina Faso, the streets were filled again, but this time with people holding hands, lighting candles, and singing. Their president had shown the world not just strength, but heart. At the courthouse, cameras rolled as Ibrahim quietly packed his small bag. He turned to the girl and smiled. "You have a future now. Don't waste it." But just as he approached the car waiting to escort him to the airport, a voice rang out. "Stop." It was Judge Judy, and she wasn't alone. Beside her stood Frank Delaney, reporters, court staff, dozens of people who had seen the broadcast, and behind them a crowd stretching down the block. "We won't let this happen," she said. "Not today." A child stepped forward holding a sign. "You saved her. Now we save you." Ibrahim looked around. His voice was soft, but steady. "I never wanted to be famous," he said. "I just wanted the world to remember what love looks like." That night, as the courthouse crowd remained outside in peaceful protest, a letter arrived, slipped beneath Judge Judy's office door. It wasn't official, no government seal, just a folded handwritten note. It read, "When I was deployed in West Africa, I saw things no human should. But one day I saw a boy giving bread to another child. His clothes were torn, his feet bruised, but he smiled. That smile saved my life. I now know that boy was Ibrahim Traoré. If this country expels him, it expels a part of its own humanity." Signed, Colonel Nathan Graves, Return, U.S. Army. Judge Judy folded the letter with trembling hands. That same night, she walked down to the courtroom. Empty, quiet, sacred. She stood in front of the bench, eyes closed, whispering to herself. "I became a judge to defend justice. Not paperwork, not politics. Justice." Then she did something she hadn't done in 40 years. She knelt. And in that silence, she knew what had to happen next. It wasn't just about one man anymore. It was about reminding the world what a single act of courage could spark, across borders, across time. The next morning, Judge Judy called a press conference, the largest of her career. Flanked by veterans, civil rights leaders, former foster youth, and children from the shelters Ibrahim had visited, she stood tall. Then she looked straight into the cameras and said, "To the President of the United States, I'm not asking, I'm demanding, let him stay." She held up the letter from Colonel Graves. "You ask us to believe in democracy, in freedom, in human dignity. Then do it now, when it matters most." Then she stepped aside, and the young girl Ibrahim had saved took the microphone. Voice shaky but brave, she said, "He saved me, when no one else did. He didn't ask where I was from. He didn't ask what I'd done. He just helped. Isn't that what America says it stands for?" Tears flowed down cheeks in the crowd. Inside the White House, aides scrambled. Phones rang nonstop. One advisor looked at the president and said, "Sir, you might want to see this." Because America wasn't just watching, it was feeling. At the airport, Ibrahim sat quietly in the waiting lounge. He held nothing but a worn-out book and a picture of his mother, the last one he ever had of her. Security approached him. "Time to board, sir." He stood, But just as he took a step forward, a phone rang at the front desk. The attendant answered, eyes widening. A moment later, she rushed toward Ibrahim. Wait, you've been granted a stay order. They're stopping the flight. He blinked. Why? She smiled through tears. Someone made a call. Said the country needed you more than ever. At that moment, across every news channel, the president stood at a podium. There are leaders who rise through politics. And then, there are leaders who rise through humanity. Today, we honor one who did both. He continued, Ibrahim Traoré will not be deported. He will be invited, officially, to speak before Congress, and I will be in the front row. Cheers erupted across the nation. Back at the courthouse, people wept, laughed, held each other. Judge Judy simply whispered, Justice, at last. And Ibrahim? He looked at the sky. I'm not going home today, he said, because maybe I already am. The day Ibrahim Traoré walked into the U.S. Capitol, the world held its breath. It wasn't the suit he wore, it was the silence that followed him. Lawmakers, journalists, and dignitaries rose to their feet, not because of protocol, but because something about his presence felt right, as if history itself had taken a seat. Judge Judy was there too, invited by the president himself. She held the girl's hand tightly. Ibrahim stepped up to the microphone. I came here as a man, not a president, not a hero, just someone who remembers what it feels like to be forgotten. He paused, looked around the room, then directly into the cameras. If one act of courage can save a child, then what could a room full of leaders do if they remembered their humanity? The room was silent. Then, one by one, they stood, applauding, tears in their eyes, not just for a speech, but for a man who reminded them what leadership should be. Across the world, millions cried watching. Even some who didn't know his name before whispered it now like a prayer. Ibrahim Traoré. After the speech, as cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, Ibrahim quietly slipped away to a small children's shelter in D.C. It was the same shelter the young girl he saved had grown up in. He brought no media crew, no reporters, just books, shoes, food, and a hand-sewn cloth from Burkina Faso that read, To the children, you are not broken, you are becoming. The children gathered around him, listening to his stories. He told them about walking barefoot for hours as a child, about sleeping with one eye open during times of war, and how one day someone gave him bread and never asked for anything in return. He looked each child in the eye. That's why I came here, not to be seen, but to see you. One boy, maybe 8 years old, hugged him tightly and asked, Will you stay forever? Ibrahim smiled. I can't stay forever. But the world can change, if enough people learn to love like they've been hurt. Outside, Judge Judy watched from the car, wiping her eyes. This wasn't politics anymore. This was healing. Days later, as Judge Judy prepared for retirement, she filmed one last courtroom episode. But it wasn't a trial. It was a tribute. She sat in her chair, held up a photograph of Ibrahim Traoré and said, They say justice wears a blindfold, but justice should see. It should feel. And that day in my courtroom, I saw what justice truly looks like. The screen faded to black. Then Ibrahim appeared, standing beneath an acacia tree in Burkina Faso, children laughing around him. He looked into the camera and said, The world doesn't need perfect people. It needs brave hearts. Even yours. The screen faded to the final sentence. This was never just a courtroom story. It was a reminder that hope, real, powerful hope, can walk into the room when no one expects it and change everything. If this story moved you, If it made you feel something deep inside, if it made you cry, smile, or believe again. Click like to honor the courage of people like Ibrahim Traoré. Leave a comment. Tell us what moment touched you most. Subscribe for more stories that remind us what truly matters in this world. Share this video. Let the world remember his name. Let the world remember what justice with a heart looks like. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. Let's tell the world together.